All right, everyone. Friday morning. Hope you are all well. The die-hard fan base, Ryan, during the international break, sticking with us to talking a bit of nonsense. I'm sure there's stuff to chat about today. How you got on the last few days without me? The channel crumbled, obviously.
Yeah. It was good to take over the hosting duties for a couple of days. Good to get that experience under your belt. Speaking with Joe was on both Wednesday and Thursday, so a worthy sidekick for sure on the morning briefing. But glad to have you back and glad that you're doing the hosting duties, especially during this international break. Sort of put the pressure on you a little bit to talk about different things. I always say that, and then there's always plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
So we always get to that half-hour mark, and even go longer than that sometimes. So yeah, there's always something to talk about with Celtic, and yeah, I'm sure today's no different.
Well, Andy's firmly on the countdown, Ryan. Only 8 days to go until our next game. Yeah, it is fair dragging in, but I think once we get past this weekend, we can really start building ahead to the Aberdeen game. Smell the gloves saying the same thing as well. Lovely to have you all with us, everyone. Do really appreciate your time and joining us. Sligo Rovers, what was the chat? I know you covered it yesterday, Ryan, but what was was there any major takeaways from that one?
Not really, apart from the fact that I think a couple of the youngsters did really well when they came off the bench. I was speaking to Lewis Laird after the game, and he was saying that the two of them, two players in particular, are really highly rated in that youth setup. Samuel Isaguzo, and Sean McArdle as well. Both of them came off the bench for Celtic in the second half against Sligo Rovers, and both had assists for Lewis Palma's second and third goal, respectively. Apart from that, Palma scored a hat trick. He had a very Palma-esque game, and I feel bad in saying that because you should be delighted that a player scored a hat trick, but he showed every version of the Lewis Palma that we know and love, and sometimes maybe don't love as much. Crossing was a bit awry. A couple of shots went off target. A free kick that was so close to going in but went just wide. But he got the 3 goals, and Brendan Rodgers was delighted with him, as I'm sure we'll talk about. Some quotes from Sligo, but there would have been a lot of, and I wrote about this yesterday in the pieces on the website if anybody wants to check it out. There would have been a lot of criticism to Palma if he had went in a huff and hadn't played in that game against Sligo Rovers, or if he had played and really just bumped his gums and was annoyed that he was taking part in a mid-season, pre-season game. He showed the correct attitude the other night by scoring a hat-trick and being involved for the 90 minutes. Yes, not everything came off for him in the game, but he kept going and he got his rewards in the end by getting the second and third goal. And I'm delighted for him because he's had a rough start to the season. He's only made 4 appearances this season in all competitions, but Rodgers is talking about the fact that he still has a part to play in this team. And hearing that and hearing what he had to say after the match as well, he'll be delighted with the way things have went for him in Sligo. A good wee confidence booster for him, and that can only help the team going forward. It's another player that Celtic can maybe rely upon as the season goes on to get goals and assists.
Sometimes it only takes one game like that, and it can be in a kind of a match that's not exactly high profile, and it might just be that little bit of confidence he needs. He's got a lot of work to do for me, Lewis Palmer, but he only really has to look at someone like Nicholas Kuhn. Now I'll put it out there straight away. I think Nicholas Kuhn is more talented than Palma. He's obviously got more pace, but I just mean in terms of like the position Kuhn found himself in at the start of pre-season. It's fair to say there weren't many people, or too many people out there who would have seen this coming. So it's been an incredible revival for Nicholas Kuhn. Like sometimes I feel like it's been lost a little bit just how in such a short period of time, like we're talking a matter of months, Nicholas Kuhn has gone from a player who I had my doubts whether he was good enough for Celtic to becoming, I don't know, our player of the season so far, Nicholas Kuhn. I think there's a fair argument for that. So Palma only needs to look at someone like that as inspiration that things can turn quickly. As I reiterate, I think Kuhn has more to his game. Like he can go kind of both ways. Palma seems quite one-dimensional. I think wanting to cut inside, and I think Kuhn obviously has more pace and probably, well, certainly better off the ball as well. So Palma's got a lot of work to do, but you're right that there have been some comments from Brendan Rodgers, I think, after the game on Wednesday night, just speaking about Palma and I won't read them out, but basically just saying that he's got a tough job because all of these players want to play, and he can't play them all every single week. But we've got a busy period coming up until, well, he says the end of January. To be honest, a busy period just coming up in general for the rest of the season probably. And he's talking about the need for players on the bench to come into matches at times and to bring that energy maybe when it's lacking in the first team. And we've seen recent examples of that, the Falkirk game, the Ross County game. Palma hasn't really been part of that coming off the bench, but Rodgers says that Palma is definitely one of the players who can do that for Celtic. So he's clearly not writing Palma off, but I just think he's going to need to offer something special off the bench, probably Palma. I don't see him starting a game anytime soon. Now, I may be wrong there because, we only really have one left winger ahead of him, really. I know Forrest can play there, but I just get the impression that Palma might have to do something when he comes off the bench to really earn that opportunity to start again.
Yeah, he's a very different player from Daizen Maeda, unfortunately, and that's to his detriment because Maeda's defensive work is so it's heralded at Celtic with what he does, but he's actually added goals to his game this season as well. Maeda's Celtic's joint top goal scorer alongside Nicholas Kuhn with 6 goals. 12 goals have come from those two players, 4 goals each from Adamida and Kyogo Furuhashi, which I had a look at yesterday. So the goals are getting spread about. The one sort of, I think the one positive that he's got is he's got a really good shot on him and he can be really accurate when he gets his shots on target. And you look at that goal that he scored against Ross County, look at the goals he scored against Aberdeen, the fact he can, I know he missed a couple of penalties, but he has scored a few as well for Celtic. He can provide an option for Celtic off the bench.
Not really another player that can do that, is there? Long shooting. I can't think of another player we really have in our books that's capable of scoring 30-yarders. Well, McGregor this season, but
not from the wing, maybe Hatate, McGregor. I know Engels has only scored from the penalty spot, but I think he's got long range shots in him as well. In terms of a wide option, and Nicholas Kuhn likes to come inside and sort of finesse the ball into the back of the net just from outside the box. If not, then a couple of meters inside the box. But with Palma, he offered something different last season. His shots from distance. I mean, if you don't buy a ticket, you don't win the raffle. And that was the case in Motherwell. Remember, I think that was his 3rd appearance for Celtic. And it was more of a cross than a shot, but he was there. He took the chance. He took the initiative and he got the goal. Yes, Motherwell equalised and then Matt O'Reilly scored the 98th minute winner. Absolute bedlam in the away stand. But I think he does have a part to play, but it's up to Lewis Palma. The talent's there. Everybody knows that he's a talented player and he's got it in his locker. He just needs to show it on a more consistent basis. He's not the only player that struggles with consistency. I'd say Rio Hatate is one of the most talented players in the squad, but his inconsistencies are the reason why the likes of Arne Engels, the likes of Paulo Bernardo are at the club. If Hatate did it every week, then I think maybe one of them wouldn't be at the club. But you need somebody like Bernardo or Engels that are going to give you that 6 or 7 out of 10 every single week. Hatate will get 8s and 9s every second, third week, but there'll be those games in the middle that are maybe a 5 or a 6, and he's not to the level that he can be. That's the reason why, and I'm sorry to sort of pivot it onto Hatate, but that's probably the reason why he's still at Celtic. Between that and injuries, his form just goes up and down so much that he doesn't have any real consistency. If he did, he wouldn't be at the club. And, for Palma, I think he can sort of take that lesson as well and get his game on a more consistent basis. Impact the game when he comes off the bench and make things happen, get those goals and assists. His big chance was against Falkirk, and I don't think he took it. But, he went about the Sligo game with a good attitude, and I think he's got to be commended for that.
I guess the difference for me between Palma and Hatate would be that Hatate has shown up in games this season on occasion. Palma really hasn't. But just a few comments. Hazel saying that he needs to get his head down, stop the nonsense and keep off social media. If Maeda gets injured, Palma is it. He needs to be ready. Derek reckons the talent is there, but he has no speed. Seamus reckons more game time will help him get back on track and back among the first team players. So that's Lewis Palma. Liam Scales scored last night, Ryan, for Republic of Ireland. Finland, they beat 2-1. Just linking it, Edward asking where Sinizalo was.
On the bench.
Yeah, in terms of Wednesday night, where was Sinizalo? He didn't play, obviously, because he's away with Finland, but he was on the bench. So Liam Scales, it's just all going well for him at the moment. He's kind of ticking them all off, isn't he, in terms of man of the matches, and he's kind of scoring a few goals at the moment as well.
He's got 3 this season already in all competitions, so that's
What's
pretty
his
good for
third?
him.
I can't think of it. Oh, it's
Uh,
Kelly. Scored against Kelly in the Flag Day, didn't he?
Flag Day, Bratislava, and now for Finland,
Big
for
game.
Ireland against Finland. Yeah, it was a header, as you would probably expect from Liam Scales, but it was a good header. I watched it a couple of times last night, and I was just gauging the response of the Irish fans. They all seem to love him. They all seem to love him playing for Ireland. He's an honest player. You know, he's not the most skillful, he's not the most elite player, but my goodness, he'll give you 100% every single game. And I think that people are starting to turn with Scales in a good way. They realise that he's there for a reason. He's there on merit, and he deserves to be in the starting lineup. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Carter Vickers comes back. Will it be him or will it be Austin Trusty that leaves? At the moment, I'd think it'd be the latter, would go back to the bench, because Scales has been so consistent this season. And it's not just what he does defensively, but his distribution on the ball is improving game on game as well. Brendan Rodgers was saying that he didn't see it coming, this development for the player, but that's just testament to his hard work, and he took a chance. You know, how many players were injured at that point? Stephen Welsh had just signed a new deal. A day later, he had an injury that kept him out for 3 months. Mike Nawrowski pulled up at Rugby Park in the League Cup exit to Kilmarnock. The players, the defenders were dropping like flies, and Scales sensed an opportunity and he took it, and he's still there a year later, and that's not down to luck. It's on merit, and he deserves to be where he is at the moment. Yes, there's parts of his games that you can improve on, but he has been improving, and I think it'd be
Yeah.
wrong to suggest otherwise. I think people have made an opinion up on Liam Scales from when he joined the club, or from when he played for Aberdeen, or when he just came back into the squad under Rodgers the second time. But he has improved. The numbers are there. It's clear. They're getting clean sheets with Liam Scales on the pitch, and his distribution's improving. Do I think that Celtic could do better in that position? Absolutely. And I'm hoping that Trusty can be that long-term option. But right now, he's got the yellow jersey, as Tony says, and he's not letting go of it anytime soon. He deserves to be where he is at the moment, and he deserves to be playing for Ireland, and he got his reward last night.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the manager does going forward. If Cameron Carter-Vickers is back for Aberdeen, he obviously will go back into the team. Who do you play next to him? My hunch would be you would have to play Liam Scales at the moment, given the way he's playing. But we shelled out a fair bit of money for Austin Trusty, and he's had a few games in a row. And Dortmund, he wasn't great, but no one really was. I think other than that, his debut wasn't brilliant, but I think in the 2 away games, St Johnstone and Ross County, I think he's looked handy enough. I think there's something to work with there with Austin Trusty. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the manager does. AR just bringing up, we can't rush CCV back too soon, which again is a fair point. But the difficulty we have with CCV is he's so important, and given how the defence performed in Dortmund, you'd like CCV to be there for Bergamo.
Yeah, I just feel I don't know how you feel about this, but I think we've got to prioritise certain games for Cameron Carter-Vickers from now on. I think he's at that stage with his injuries that he's picking up persistent injuries, and it's not worth him not being available for any games. So I think in terms of 2-day or 2-game weeks or 3-game weeks, you pick one, maybe 2 games that he can play and one that he can sit out on. That's what I want Trusty's role to be that player that can come in and take Carter Vickers' place, because I think you're going to have to start prioritising games. His injuries are too much of a concern for me over the past 2 years. How many games has he missed? I'd be amazed to see. I'd be intrigued and probably amazed to see the percentage of games that Carter Vickers has actually missed for Celtic.
High? Do you think it's high, or is it just that we miss him so much when he isn't there?
It could be overinflated because of that, but at the same time, it does feel as if he's on the sidelines quite a lot for a player that's so important to Celtic. And I think you've just got to prioritise. Look at those Champions League games. Don't make him play the game that's 3 or 4 days after that. That can be Austin Trusty's game, or Liam Scales, or even Mike Nawrowski, who did not look impressive against Sligo Rovers whatsoever, but it's just the one game, I guess.
Can you do that in the backline? See when you've got, like, I think we all agree the backline, you can maybe do that up front if it was Kyogo, for example, pick his games, etc. But you want your backline to be settled. Could you go from Trusty and Scales at the weekend against Aberdeen, and then you just break that up and put Carter Vickers in for Atalanta?
It's difficult because I feel Austin Trusty has been bought for £6 million. That's a big financial outlay for Celtic for a not a defensive midfielder, for a centre back, and he's got to be playing a lot of games to justify that price tag. So if you're swapping, if you're swapping and changing them game on game, it's a £6 million player for a £6.5 million player. I know Carter Vickers is a better defender than Austin Trusty, and I would like to see the two of them play more often than not in that defensive back line. That's what I want to see eventually, those
We've
be
seen
the
it
two.
yet, have we?
I know we haven't, and that's because of Austin Trusty's had his opportunity because Cameron Carter Vickers got injured or he came off early against Slovan Bratislava. He didn't play in the next game against Falkirk, and then St Johnstone, Borussia Dortmund, and then what was the game at the weekend? That's totally Ross County away. Austin Trusty's played in all of those games, so we've not seen the two of them. I'd like to see the two of them because they'll be familiar with each other, being in the US men's national team. Also, just the US men's national team. They weren't at Sheffield United at the same time, but they'll be familiar with each other's game, and one plays on the left and one plays on the right. That'll be the ideal defensive partnership, but at this moment in time, both due to Cameron Carter-Vickers' injuries, and they are persistent, then I just think that it's got to be Scales and somebody else at this moment in time. Scales has been Celtic's best defender this season, and he's got that yellow jersey, and he doesn't intend on losing it anytime soon.
Yeah, as I say, it's one to keep an eye on. Many things to keep an eye on. 8 days away from the big Aberdeen game, and we're feeling good about that. Elsewhere, international-wise, Japan last night beat Saudi Arabia 2-0. Maeda came on for the last half an hour. Reo Hatate, poor Reo Hatate, not involved. Again, an unused substitute. And Japan, I think, play Australia in their next game. Australia won 3-1 last night. They've just got a new manager in. So that'll be an interesting game, to be honest. I think, based on what people are saying here, I think Japan will beat them pretty comfortably. But I don't think Hatate's going to feature in that game. And I don't know, you obviously, he'll love playing for Japan, but you wonder at what stage... I mean, as I'm saying that, I don't think he's going to ever turn down a call-up, because that would obviously end his hopes completely. But you wonder at what stage he looks at it and goes, right, say he doesn't play against Australia, that would be 2 international breaks in a row that he's been called up, travelled to the other side of the world, and hasn't played a single minute, and that can't be very fun at all. Now, I know this isn't 7 or 8-year-olds playing football where you give everyone minutes, and it's a tough world. It's professional football, but it just seems pretty harsh on Hatate. That he's travelling diligently to the other side of the world and isn't getting game time.
It's extremely harsh, and I hope that he does get some game time just to make the trip worth it for him, going to the other side of the world, as you quite rightly said. It is a complete shame for a player, and he's a good player, but Japan have got a really good midfield at the moment as
Yeah.
well, and that's
So
what Brendan Rodgers
Lachlan
talked
makes a
about.
fair point, Ryan. So sorry for cutting across. You're just saying that
Aye.
you can't criticise a Japan manager when they're rolling, and that's a fair point. Japan are unbelievable at the moment. They're winning every game 5-0, practically apart from last night.
Yeah, they've just got a really good pool of players to choose from, and a lot of their players are playing in the top 5 leagues in the world. They're spreading out. You get the same for South Korea as well, to an extent. So you're seeing that expansion of Asian football ever so slightly. But Japan just looked. I think everybody started to take notice of Japan in the 2022 World Cup when they beat Germany. They just really, everybody stood up and took notice of the talent that's there. Celtic had been sort of shopping or getting players from that pool for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden they didn't do it as much. I know they've had a couple of players here and there, but it seems that the European sides have got wise to the fact that there are players there of really good technical ability that you can get at a good age and a good experience as well. So it is disappointing for Hatate. He's a really good player. but it just goes to show you how strong Japan are at the moment if you can't even get off the bench. Sometimes he's on the bench for Celtic. Maybe if he was starting games for Celtic on a more consistent basis, he would have a better chance of playing for Japan. Although you say that, Kyogo plays most games for Celtic and he doesn't even get called up for the squad. So it's an interesting one, and I feel for the player personally, but I'm just hoping that it has a positive effect on him when he comes back fit and firing for Celtic rather than feeling sorry for himself, because it could go either way for the player.
I think Roger spoke about that last time, the last international break, having to just kind of check in on Hatate, I think, because it must be quite a difficult thing to deal with. Arne Engels on the bench last night for Belgium, he didn't play, they drew with Italy. So still cool to see him involved at that level. I'm not bothered if he doesn't get any game time, to be honest. I'm kind of happy for him just to rest for a bit and come back and hopefully get back to that level we've seen so far in his first few games. Any other? Someone was asking if Tilly was part of the Australia squad. I don't believe so. I certainly didn't see his name last night anywhere.
It was an odd signing, wasn't it? A really, really odd signing.
Back
Looking back
Melbourne
on
City this season.
Yeah, I suppose you could give us I know you've probably been watching a little bit of Melbourne City. Has he been playing every week for Melbourne City? Because it seems as if he's so far out the picture. Nobody's even talking about him in terms of a lone watch of a player. He's just been left to do his own thing. But has he been playing games for them?
No, he had injury problems last season. I think he joined them, was it in January that he joined them, which is similar to Scotland. It's kind of halfway through the season in Australia. So, I do some work for Melbourne City, so I'm at like all of their home games, and I've actually seen him play once. So that tells you how many games he's been missing for. It was a Melbourne derby actually, and he looked decent enough. You could tell at that level, and it's certainly a lower level, I would say generally. Certainly not the pressure, but he kind of stood out at that level, I would say. And I was looking at it, and the time Celtic were struggling, and I was kind of thinking, have we messed up here by maybe not giving him more of a chance? But clearly as Kuhn has come on and Maida's come on, I would say a lot in the last 6 months, and we've had the re-emergence of James Forrest. We no longer really have that issue. So it clearly wasn't a good signing. I would have liked to see him given a bit more of an opportunity. I think the fact he arrived injured at Celtic, I think it was a hamstring injury, really set him back, and he found it difficult. But we only saw him for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. You'd have liked to seen him for a bit more. But obviously that's based on the manager not rating him or whatever.
Yeah, it's quite weird that, and I'm not comparing the two players, it's just because of where they both come from and the fact of how they got to Celtic as well. One was on loan and then one came permanently. But you look at the comparisons with Daniel Arzani, and I know that Daniel Arzani got injured on his debut. I think it was at Dens Park. It was a shocking injury. I remember being really, really excited about that player. I remember seeing the clips of him, hearing him speak in his press conferences, and then he finally got that debut. And it was a dreadful, dreadful injury. I remember watching it and being absolutely gutted for the player, because everybody was gutted. You could tell, even Brendan Rodgers was gutted, all the players around him. But it seems as if these players maybe struggle to get to. And I remember watching him actually at Clifton Hill for Celtic against Albion Rovers in a friendly game, and he struggled to impress. I know he's kind of kick-started his career over in Australia once again, which is good to see. But it seems as if the same sort of thing's happening with Marco Tilio, just picking up injuries. He's still young; he can still improve, but I just don't see his future being at Celtic at all. He's one of these players that he's on loan, and you don't see him coming back and taking a place. Like, he's going to be, if he was to come back, he'd be competing with Nicholas Kuhn, and I'd say Kuhn is about 3 or 4 times the player right now, even physically as well. Because when he came on for those two games, I believe he came on against Motherwell late on. He looked really, really lightweight, and I got that impression with Karamoko Dembele as well. You need that physicality, and that was the problem that Nicholas Kuhn had when he started, but he's now got that. You can see it when you watch him in person. He's built up that muscle back. He's got those 8 or 9 kilos back that he'd lost from the wisdom teeth surgery, and he's put it all in his weight because his upper body strength. You can see it. I mean, the Adidas tops don't hide anything. They are skin tight, and he is absolutely built. So he's got that position down basically from now until the end of the season, you would say, Kuhn, which is unfortunate for the likes of James Forrest, etc. But he's been Celtic's best player this season, and he deserves to be there. For Marco Tilio, I don't know where his future lies, but probably not at Celtic, unfortunately.
Yeah, certainly not at Celtic. It's funny because Daniel Arzani's playing here as well. He plays for the other Melbourne team, Melbourne Victory.
Mm-hmm.
So the derby last year had Arzani on one side on the right wing, and Tilly on the other side right wing. So it was a strange thing to witness as a Celtic fan, obviously.
Still only 25. Wow, that shows you how
Arzani,
young he was. Arzani's only
wow.
25. He
He looked.
came.
I would say he looks decent enough when I've seen him. Not particularly quick. Probably a bit like Lewis Palma, a bit of Lewis Palma about him on the other side. But I think he's right-footed, so it's a lot of it's kind of outside that he does. But yeah. Anything else kind of on your mind at the moment?
I'm just looking forward to the real stuff coming back. I know Scotland play tomorrow night against Croatia, which is live on YouTube, funnily enough, because nobody picked it up. Nobody picked it up for the game. But Scotland-Croatia, chance to maybe see some of the Celtic players in action, see if Tony Ralston gets a game for Scotland. But I'm really just looking forward to the real domestic football coming back. And what a game to come back to against Aberdeen.
Yeah.
There's more Aberdeen players in the Scotland squad than Celtic players at the moment. When's the last time that happened? I think you'd need to probably go back to the 70s or the 80s for that to happen. But Jack McKenzie, Nicky Devlin, and then Kevin Nisbet joined up late. So they're getting their credit that they deserve, and those players will probably feature, or some of them will feature against Croatia. But you're looking at that game, it's Saturday, it's Croatia v Scotland in Croatia, and then the following Saturday, it's Aberdeen or Celtic v Aberdeen at Celtic Park. Delighted with the way that people have came out and kind of support of Celtic as well, with the decision that they took to step out of that deal with Premier Sports and not take the extra money. There was a great column piece that's going about just now that said it's good that Celtic aren't biting the hand that feed them, because the fans are the loyal ones. They're going to every game, home and away. And if they were to change that, then it would provide more problems for those travelling fans, even fans from Ireland, etc., that go
Yeah,
to
it's too
every game.
short notice, isn't it, to
Mhm.
change the kick-off time? I think that's,
But
for me, that's the bottom line. I know there's a bit of a debate over whether games should be on television, and is it fair that you kind of prioritise season ticket holders? I don't think, to be honest, as much of a case of that. I think it's just that Celtic felt that it was too short notice, a couple of weeks out, to potentially have this game moved, and who knows where they would have put it, lunchtime on Saturday. I know the 5:30 kickoff on a Saturday's tended to be their preference. I know that's not exactly a terrible kickoff, but you don't know what arrangements fans have made travelling over from Ireland or wherever, ferries back, etc., that you'd be kind of putting at risk if you move the game late. So, yeah, I thought it was a fair call, but it's been quite a divisive issue. I've been a little bit surprised by how kind of passionate people have been, but we're all passionate about Celtic, I guess. But I'm looking forward to it as well. I can't wait for the game. In terms of Scotland, Croatia, will we see Juranovic? Will he be playing for Croatia?
he's had a lot of injury issues over the past few years, so I'm not sure if he's in the Croatia lineup. But it's been a shame for him, because he made such a good start to his Union Berlin career, and he's had injuries that seem to, because every time I check Union Berlin, he doesn't seem to be playing, which is really disappointing for the player. I thought it was a bit of a sideways move, to be honest with you,
I
because
agree.
and I think Celtic have largely upgraded. Maybe not on the European stage, because I thought Juranovic was quite decent in Europe, apart from the Shakhtar Donetsk game that he really struggled against Mudryk. I think that's been Mudryk's only good game in the past 2-3 years, and probably got him that move to Chelsea in the January transfer window. It's really not worked out for him since. But yeah, I think largely Johnson does everything that Juranovic does, and he's a better defender, and he's actually chipping in with assists as well. So yeah, it's disappointing to see how his careers went, but he made his bed. Unfortunately, he did make notions that he wanted to leave after the World Cup, despite him saying otherwise. I think it was quite clear that he wanted to leave. Union Berlin came in. I don't think Celtic needed to sell him at that point, but they would have got notions from the player. That's why they brought in Johnson. Johnson made his debut against Rangers in the Glasgow Derby, and the rest is history, really, because Juranovic had a dreadful game, and his card was marked. Basically, he was gone after that. So yeah, I don't. It's not as if I miss Juranovic, but he was a good player, a good penalty kick taker, and was important in Celtic wrestling the title back from Rangers in the first season of Askin. But yeah, it's a shame the way his careers went, but he's not a Celtic player anymore. So, you can only feel a certain degree of sympathy before you're like, it doesn't really affect Celtic that much. They got the money for him.
We did. Right, anything else? Because if not, I think we'll probably head off.
There was one other thing that I was going to talk about, and I cannot remember for the life of me. It's totally went out of my head. I'm just looking forward to that Aberdeen game, to be honest with you.
That's
I
the
think
go-to,
everybody's.
isn't it? That's the
Yeah,
go-to.
it's the go-to on the briefings as well, but we're all excited and it's a big game. It's the biggest game against Aberdeen since I would probably say 2016 odd. I know you've had cup finals as well, but domestically in the league, that game against Aberdeen, I think it was at home. There was a game away from home and then there was a game at home as well. And Paddy Roberts really did announce himself against
We
Aberdeen.
won the league
It was the
that day,
game.
or,
Mhm.
or, or virtually won the league.
But there was the game away from home as well that Aberdeen won. I remember
2-1.
Colin Kazim Richards made his debut for Celtic, and that was a really, really dark spot because
Yeah.
Aberdeen looked as if they were going to be title challengers at that point in February, March time. We'll see if they have the staying power this time around, but a big game. Looking forward to seeing what Jimmy Tillene's Aberdeen side bring to Celtic to see if they actually go for it at Celtic Park. I believe that they will. I think not that they'll see it as a free hit, but they'll see it as an opportunity. And I think it's really exciting. I'm counting down the days already until I can witness that game in person. I think it's going to be a cracker.
Yep, it's going to be great. Bit of chatting to be done before then. Right, everyone, we'll head off for now. Thanks so much for watching us this Friday morning. I hope you have a lovely rest of your Friday, great weekend. Tony back next week. People
He
probably
will be.
want to
He will be back.
make a
Yeah, I know
big
he's had an enjoyable week off. So, yeah, he'll be back on Monday to discuss everything. I don't know how he'll feel about a Lewis Palma hat trick. I will bring it up to him on the Monday. No penalties, so he doesn't need to worry about that. But, yeah, we'll be delighted to have the three-man show back with Tony being back on Monday morning.
Great stuff, Ryan. Thank you once again. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Keep following us. You can support our work by becoming a member. You can subscribe to us. That would be much appreciated as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good weekend. Catch up with you very soon.